5K, 4K, just take that out a little bit.
Yeah.
Also just, cleaning it up and cleaning up the reverb return. Nick does passive reverb, so there's like reverbs and delays, and I just cleaned that up even more. And it's going through my SSL bus, which may have a little bit of top end. So it's just a little bit of tweaking. She had an incredible mic. I mean, she records on the U47, a Flea U47. So once you have really good microphone, you need to step out of the way a little bit and just focus on those things like, getting the right vocal tone and things like that, and just taking out little harsh things.
Yeah,
it wasn't surgery.
Were you compressing it and like de-essing it, or was it like not even
a little bit of compression, a little bit, very, very little. I mean, very, very little. They were compressing on the way in with recording. So people, when you're mixing, also understand that those vocals may be compressed already. So you're adding more compression, which if you do too much, you could lose top end like that. So that's when I use my fader port. Exactly what I was using that for. The song is very, very dynamic. It gets very loud towards the end and things like that. And that's when your automation helps, because you're pulling those elements down and you're not triggering the bus compressor.
Right.
So the bus compressor gets to chill, and then since it's chilling, it opens up the record a little bit more because it's not compressing it. Even if you're compressing half a dB, you're going to start shrinking the stereo field a little bit.
Interesting.
Instead of, people would do that, you could also automate your mix bus compression threshold, because you feel like it's clamping too much. You can literally go on automation and pull it back. And open up the record again. And then a lot of people, I think, may think statically about that stuff. And I'm thinking, well, if it doesn't need to be that low, I can actually raise the threshold where it's doing very little and then put it back to where it was to keep that glue.
Yeah. I've tried doing that, and it messes with my head a little bit. So I have avoided it. I kind of like want my stereo bus compressor to be a set it, forget it. Once it's like hitting at the right amount, like I just don't want to. I want it to be the right amount at like the top of the song, and hopefully it's like getting just those pops at the beginning. Let's say if it's more dynamic and the beginning is not hitting, and like I don't know, just because changing the threshold level, just I don't know, for some reason it throws me off on the stereo bus. But maybe I play with it again. I don't know.
Yeah, it's an interesting technique. Like what every record is, you kind of come up with things differently. And also on the master bus, I was using the Shadow Hills mastering compressor, but I wasn't using the compression. I was using the harmonics. Yeah. So adding more harmonics to it, and the Oxford inflator gave it more noise because more level. And harmonics is interesting because you're kind of getting free gain, by saturating.
Right.
So instead of compressing, you're lifting up the harmonic material, the audible stuff, and then also you can just get depth and richness like that. Like on the strings, I use the Oro Exciter, the Apex Wave one, and I high passed it and just use the top end of that, and then use the low end of another saturation and blended the two. So I had a
get
warmer
creative with the multi-band aspect of the saturation.
Yeah, but kind of making your own multi-band, just filtering the saturation of what you have. So it just did things a little differently than I normally do things, and use the PSP E24 on the piano, just a little bit of that. It's very little subtle moves, but they do add up a lot when you hear the final.
Yeah, I love it, man. Well, congrats, dude. I think it sounds awesome, and looks like you're doing awesome work.
I appreciate that.
And it's probably awesome just to work with an artist of that caliber who's has such a history and stuff. So that's dope.
Yeah, I'm grateful. I'm super grateful.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about mastering? Do you send out? Do you have like a regular person? Do you master yourself?
Yeah, some things I might master myself just because of deadline. Like the Racial song was basically my master. We it was just crunch time, and that's what we needed to do. I like Alex Predikidis. He's usually my go-to guy. I had a bunch of different master engineers. I had Ruben Cohen master something, Dave Kutch. I like to have relationships with mastering engineers so that I can understand what I'm doing and if I could do it better. And
Yeah.
a lot of the times when I go to the mastering, I would sit there and just kind of watch them work, and if I can, and it's very, very little work. I think for other people they may dig in more, but I remember one mastering session, a mastering guy, he just added half a dB or something, and half a dB there, and then the record was done. And he A/B'd what he did and what I did, and it was very, very subtle.
Yeah.
It was very subtle, but he was like, the mix is so good. You don't need. I'm not, CPRing your mix.
Yeah.
So that also sees, where you could fix your room or, fix your mixes and ask your master engineer what else could be done.
Right.
And then when you have that relationship, your mixes get better because you're hearing it for in a different room with someone who has a different set of ears and can help you out.
Yeah. And, we all miss things, right? Like we all have our blind spots. So hopefully the mastering engineer is like enlightening us with what we are actually missing. Recently a mastering engineer told me like, oh yeah, this vocal needs a bit more 2K. I was like, really? I was like, oh yeah, it was missing that, and it's just like, okay, great. You know what I mean? That really helps. Cause like you get so hyper focused sometimes as a mixer, that you kind of lose the forest for the trees, and you need that objectivity, that outsider, that knowledge to help, hone you back in.
Yeah. My master engineer, I remember I did a mix in LA out of my own studio, and he called me. He's like, hey, this record's coming a little hot. I'm like, yeah, I know. He's like, it's a little hotter than my usual stuff, volume wise. And I was like, I can adjust it for you. And the fact that you have a relationship where they call you and they say, hey, are you working somewhere else? Like there's something different about what you're usually doing. I'm like, hey, I'm on the West Coast using monitors I don't really know, and this is a different kind of song than what I usually do.
Yeah.
So he's like, yeah, give me a little bit quieter thing, and we'll figure it out. And it went smooth sailing. So that's kind of where you could have that good relationship with the master.
Yeah, love it. So do you want to pitch your podcast to my podcast listeners?
Oh, man.
Now that we're in the zone.
I have this podcast called In the Zone that me and my manager made. Basically, I'm like, what do we do as mixers? We're kind of in the zone. We're super focused. And I wanted to really talk about the other side of engineering, not just the philosophy of like techniques and things, but I want to talk about real life struggles. Like people just see Grammys and plaques, and they don't understand the hard work that it took for someone to get there, and how their personality has to be for them to get there. What kind of work ethic you need to have, what kind of intensity you need to have. So like I had incredible guests. I had Stuart White, Beyonce's mixer, as a guest, David Kim, who's Nipsey Hussle's mixer and mixed the Nas record, Joey Reyes, who mixes all of Run the Jewels. This guy, Richie Beretta, worked with Diplo and Major Lazer. Wow. I had really, really incredible guests just from the beginning, because I have good relationship with a lot of different incredible mixers, and I wanted to really have those conversations so people could hear, and also make it a podcast that a regular person can understand. Because I got this whole in the zone branding thing that I do. I want people to understand what we do, and it's hard to do it when there's just technical jargon that goes over people's heads. So I'm like, well, how could someone relate to another person? A lot of people could relate to David Kim's story about meeting his producer. I mean, he was a runner at Chalice, and he got a Chick-fil-A order in 15 minutes. Like, those are stories that people gravitate to. Like, for me, I have a storyteller kind of heart. So like, I like to tell stories, and I think the podcast hopefully tells stories.
Nice. I love it, man. My favorite part about podcasting has been meeting people, and I didn't think that was going to be my favorite part about podcasting when I started, but like that's just totally been what it's about. Like I love meeting people and forming relationships with people all over the world who I get to interview. So it's that's an honor. I wonder if that's something that you I'm sure that's something that you also love about it.
Oh, dude, I love the art of the interview. Is so difficult, like I do research like you do. And I listened to every other interview that person has done. And I said to myself, I'm not going to ask the questions that they already. I'm not going to ask the obvious questions. Like, give me. I'm gonna dig in a little bit more and get more out of my guest than they previously said. Because I know the job and I know like how hard it is to do the job. So for me, I attack it at a different angle, and I don't romanticize the job. Like I know it's a real job and it's hard, and yes, you get accolades, but you know, there's more to the person than how many Grammys they got and how many Billboard charting albums.
If you're in the music business for money or for Grammys, like that's you're doing it for the wrong reasons, and I don't know how it's going to last. You know?
Yeah, you can't do it for outside validation because, to be honest, that's out of our control. We can't give ourselves a Grammy. We can't give ourselves a #1 record.
Yeah,
but we can give ourselves to be a good person and to be humble and. Honestly, the most successful people I ever work with, are the most humble. It's kind of the more arrogant, insecure people who are kind of beating their chest for every little thing they do. And doing interviews helps me, not only form relationships, but also understand people better in general. So I love that as well, with podcasting. I didn't think I was going to be a podcaster or host, but it's an incredible space,
it is an incredible space. Yeah, because I mean, I love also just because like when I listen to podcasts, it's just so great to like really focus on just the audio and really listen while I'm doing a mindless task, like doing dishes or driving somewhere or whatever it is. Like you're really focused in on the conversation. It's not like watching YouTube where you're kind of also visually stimulated and and people have real conversations. Like that's what's amazing. It's like in the age of the internet where nobody sees the same facts online, right? Everybody's like in their own echo chamber or bubble or whatever. People actually have real conversations on these podcasts, and like that's real. That's huge, and that's what we need in this internet era.
Yeah, I mean, someone like Joe Rogan. The reason why he did such a Spotify deal that's so big, he interviews interesting people. He has an interesting outsider perspective to talk to, like an Elon Musk or a Kanye West or a comedian or a scientist. I mean, he's a great interviewer because he's coming from pure curiosity for everything. He talks to musicians. He's like, how do you feel when you get off a stage? Like, how does this make you feel? His approach is, not like Bob or Walters, which is probably going to make you, or Oprah, who makes people cry because she gets that emotional. She's so good at interviewing and getting people emotional because she kind of is great at that. Like there's different interview styles.
Yeah,
and I think
sure.
His style is cool because it's kind of like he's just curious. He's like asking Elon Musk. He's like, "What do you do with all that money?" He has all these. He's thinking like what everyone else is thinking, but he's going to say it. He's like, "You're rich. You're successful."
Yeah.
What keeps you up at night? Like he has those kind of questions.
Yeah, I that's a big lesson I've taken from him, actually. It's just to follow my curiosity. Because, like, if you go back to the beginning of this podcast, you'll hear me, like, read a question, wait for an answer, read another question, you know what I mean? At a certain point, you got to just be like, okay, what am I interested in hearing now that I've heard this? You know what I mean? And just follow that. And chances are, if I'm curious about something, then someone else listening is also curious about that as well. And, it took me a long time, I think, to become a decent podcast host. I would say maybe 40 episodes because you have to learn how to like, I mean, maybe I was just a slow learner, but it's between having questions lined up and, going with the flow and seeing where it goes and just kind of having to juggle that. It took me a bit of time, I think. But you develop it, it's like anything. It's like mixing, you know what I mean? You do enough mixes, you start to get better or, anything in life.
Yeah, you get better and you analyze what works and what doesn't work. And I do a lot of research, and I don't write questions down. I kind of just freestyle it. But I do believe the first question, how you set it up, is the hardest. Because once you start talking, the conversation is going to flow, and then you kind of want to steer it some type of way. So I love having another host on there, Max, because he can come at it from a music industry management, different side of conversation where I could be talking studio work or technical, and someone else has a different kind of question, and we just filled out, and I think people appreciate that.
Yeah, that's something that I did like a trial run of another kind of podcast with a friend of mine just to